get started, because like I said, I have way too many slides, so, and I'll try to get through them as soon as possible, but I say that in one breath, and the next breath I say, I don't want that to mean that we don't talk.
Right.
Because that discussion is really the most important part of what we're doing here. We have to work together and grow together. This isn't just about me standing up here and lecturing, because that is not my intention. So,
Question,
yeah.
when does it get online in a couple of days usually, or?
Usually, yeah, because
Okay.
Connie's got to go through it and edit it
Okay.
and whatever.
She's
fast.
Remember the 5 principles? All you got to do is remember your 5 fingers. God is, I am, I think, I pray, I live. God is, I am, I think, I pray, I live. So that is, to me, just an easy way to remember those principles. And we're going to be talking a lot about principles today. So let's start with our opening prayer. Just take a few moments to relax and take a couple of deep breaths if that helps, and if you can close your eyes or whatever makes you the most comfortable, so that you can find that center, that eye of every storm, of every opportunity. So let's go to that place where we know our oneness with that divine presence that lives in, through, and as us, where we are one with each other. When we look at someone else, all we're seeing is a reflection of our own self. If we find fault, that fault is within us. If we find goodness, that goodness is in us. It is all here for us to learn and grow, and that's why we are here today. And we are so grateful for every person that's here, for the opportunity to learn and grow and come together and share with one another what we learn and what we can give back from what we learn to each other and to the people whose lives we will touch when we leave here today. And for that, we are so grateful, and we say amen.
Amen.
So, yes.
Before you start,
Yeah.
I somehow may have given my book to someone else at the beginning. So if anybody has a book, and I know it's not Carol, I just gave you, and it's not Linda's, because I just gave you that. It would have been within a couple of weeks before that. And it would just have some pencil underlining in it. You know, I underline. So if somebody has a book that has got a lot of pencil underlining, I may have given you the wrong book. And I do have 2 more books, well, 1 more book.
Gee, that one looks like brand new.
I got some underlining in here. I don't know if this
Is it a lot of underlining with pencil?
Look at the beginning. Does it have your name in it?
I don't remember if I put my name in it or not.
there, but I don't
Yeah,
see a
this
whole lot.
Oh, it's got a, is this yours?
Yes.
Oh, never mind.
It's got a winning lottery ticket in it.
I know.
That's my ticket.
That
All right,
Then you can keep,
What?
let me look at that really quick, and
You
then.
can, I think that's the only
sign
one
in
that's
sheet,
there.
where did
What,
that go?
you can come look at this because there is some
Yeah,
pencil.
there it is.
Yeah, there's only one
It-
underline.
And it looks
But
like
you
it's
can look
from
at
the
it.
beginning.
I told you, I read my book.
Looks like
With
it's at
the
the
program
beginning. Everyone's
overview,
toward
you
the
know
beginning,
what,
not the end.
we're
Right.
all about
Toward the
here, so
beginning.
we're gonna skip over that.
Underline the whole thing.
The whole
And
thing,
The
okay.
program and the purpose, we
Can
know
we
all
sign?
that. So let's do a quick
Just have-
introduction. My name is, and one thing I took from session 1, and if you can keep it brief, that'd be great. You wanna start, Mary Ann?
I said, don't ask me because I can't even think. Oh,
If you don't have anything, it's okay.
well, I
Say yes.
I got
No
to
pressure.
My name is Mary Ann Catoni, and the thing I took from one thing I took with me from session 1, while the conflict is within me, it all starts with me. And,
Perfect. Perfect.
I will say this now,
Your
because it
name?
may not come up, Carol. So, it may not come up during today. I noticed a difference in my daughter in my texting communication, and it was because of me not taking personally a boundary she was setting with me, and it felt so good, oh my God. And so she was so relieved, and she said I was afraid to take the risk, of saying what, and I can tell you what it was, because I told her I was going to ask my friends, does it bother, and if they bothered them too. Sometimes, because a lot, even on texting, I will say, you don't have to answer this, right? Because I feel like it's a gift to them, so they know.
Right.
But she said I was micromanaging, and this is her perspective, right?
Mhm.
And she didn't like it, right? But it was okay, because I wouldn't have known that if she hadn't told me, right?
Right.
So I said, thank you for taking the risk. I said, our communication has grown so much, but I'm telling you, last week helped me be able to do that. all I'm
That's
saying.
great.
It
That's
felt really
really
good.
good. That's.
Oh, thank you, it was fun. I did it.
My name is Linda, and one thing that I took from this class is I felt very comfortable in talking about whatever it was that we were, I didn't feel like we were being judged or anything like that. It was just very open, very comfortable.
Yeah. And Mike, you weren't able to be here last week.
I'm
I'm
Mike.
glad you're feeling better.
I'm Michelle, and I found that I'm moving through the levels of conflict. I started out as a controller, and I kind of started to move through the rest of the patterns.
My name is Darrell, and I was just really giving some thought about the I, going through the storm, like was it me or God? I was just really pondering on that.
That's good. That's good. That's what we're here to do. Because the more we question, the more we learn.
My name is Sharon, and I became aware of things that I do that trigger in someone else.
Yeah, that's good.
My name is Linda, and in reading the book on page 97, The Parable of the Dragnet, I really appreciated that from Matthew 13:47 through 50, in just kind of like comparing fishing when they're all their nets and they throw out the fish that aren't edible or usable in any way, and keep the good ones, and that's true of our thoughts.
What page is that again, Linda?
97, the awareapy, and all of the awareapy really
The
makes you
awareapies are really
think
good.
about that.
If you haven't taken advantage of reading through those and thinking about those and maybe actually writing some of those down.
My name is Kimberly, and I just really enjoyed the first session, and I did do the
Oh,
you
good.
know, and I wrote it out, and one of them was, the first chapter is, tell a funny story about how you avoided conflict, and I think, in some ways, if you can, like, be light of stuff, you can get through stuff, if you kind of joke about stuff. But I also enjoyed about, like you said, knowing where, like, conflict and what makes you a person.
Yeah.
How you react to different things.
Very good. And I love the fact that you focused on making life, just look for the good. And, I laugh at myself all the time. It's just, because I'm like, really? Okay then.
Like, what just did I do?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go through chapters 4 through 7, not 4 and 5. If it was only 4 and 5, it would be great because we'd actually get through the slides real easily. However, if we did that, then we would never finish in 3 sessions. So chapter 4 is about making friends with conflict. And I love this quote from the book. And has anybody ever studied martial arts?
Well, Tai Chi counts. I think.
Tai Chi counts. Then would you please read this for us, Carol?
Before I became a black belt, if someone pushed me around, I either ran away or had to fight because I was afraid. Now that I'm a black belt, if someone wants to fight, I can walk away.
But you can also
Do you
Interesting.
get that?
Yes, interesting. Because he could really hurt them with
The
a
only
back belt.
thing that changed though, really, even if we don't have a martial arts black belt, is what's going on in here. Because that's really what changed with that person, isn't it?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
His awareness of self.
His awareness of self. Because one of the things that martial arts teaches is respect. Not just respect for others, but respect for oneself.
And that person could really hurt somebody with a black
Yeah,
belt. I'm just saying.
exactly.
It really hurt somebody.
Discipline too.
But now that he had, now that
That's what I'm saying, that's why he chose not to, because he knew he could hurt somebody
Right.
badly.
He knew how to earn it.
Yeah, but
Actually-
also he was more confident in his abilities if he did get into a fight.
That's true.
bottom line, love and fear. He no longer had to come from a place of fear.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's really the difference. That he no longer had to come from a place of fear. So when we go within, we either go within or we go without. I love that phrase. Because in fear, we either run or we fight. Fear forces action, but when we are centered, when we can go to the eye of the storm, that place inside ourselves where it's always calm and peaceful, that's where, like the black belt, we can be confident. And what happens is once we are there, the universe reveals to us all kinds of choices and options. And we're going to talk about this in more detail. And remember last week I talked about Manindra and Khan? The bottom line of that story, the reason Manindra was able to be fearless in the face of that threat of death was that he sat defenseless because he knew that regardless of what happened, he was going to be okay. And that's how we want to go into all these challenging situations. When we step into it, we know before anything happens that we're going to be okay. So we don't have to be fearful. Defenselessness, that is hard to say,
Right.
is at the heart of living from wholeness. And that's what the living from the eye of the storm is, living from that wholeness that lives in and through us. Love and fear. A power greater than our fear. So we don't run away from our feelings. We don't say, we don't put on the false front, the false face. We feel the fear. And at the same time, we stay connected to that source, to that center. That all-powerful, all-knowing. That's the key. And there's always change. And with change, there is movement, resistance, pressure, or interaction. And when that happens, there is a potential for conflict. So whenever whatever situation we're in, because everything moves, right? Everything changes. So every situation, there is the potential that we could run into conflict. And it's not a question of when or if. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And the question of when it happens, how are we going to deal with it? Are we going to deal with it from our center, or are we going to deal with it in some less than productive way? Because everything is either coming into existence, developing, or it's decaying or going out of existence. So there's nothing is stagnant. Nothing. It's all changing all the time, including us. As we sit, there are cells in our body that are dying and cells that are being born. This is what's this is what life is all about. change is the heartbeat of the universe.
Oh, I love that slide.
Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
I thought so too.
You found some cool ones.
I kind of made that up.
You made a cool one. Yeah.
Well, I found the big part and then I put the little
Heart in
moving
there.
one in there.
Cool.
So it was just, anyway. And back to the yin and yang.
I had when we did meditation last week, I had yin and yang come up here to me with the crow.
That's
Crow
great.
was my kind of
Is that your spirit animal? Okay, cool. Yin and yang are present in all things, love, career, or life in general. Opposing forces must be balanced the right way in order to achieve harmony. The symbol represents completion, and that duality is required to achieve equilibrium. So we're going to be talking more about that balance and about achieving that equilibrium. Being and doing, okay, there are of the self, there are what they call two poles. And being and doing are the primary poles of self. And I said this morning in my talk. What we do in our lives fundamentally arises out of who we are. And who we are is reinforced and made solid by what we do. So when we behave in a way that is not true to ourselves, that behavior is reinforcing that not trueness. So we want to, as much as we possibly can, and it's a learning process. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. We're not gonna, and no one, probably, unlikely, none of us is gonna end up being Jesus.
Why? I don't.
Be yourself, everyone else has already been taken, including
Yes.
Jesus.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's very, very
So
true.
we don't beat ourselves
So we
up.
just need to realize that spirit is one. That oneness is what we focus on. Depending on where our attention is, we are either at the center or the circumference of our lives. And of course we know that spirit is at the center, and it's at the circumference where all that change is taking place, all that turmoil is taking place. And if we can remain at the center, then we can remain calm. So, at the center, there is peace, harmony, serenity, balance, and wholeness. At the circumference is the yin and yang, the complementary poles of energy in a relationship. And I thought this was an interesting quote. This did not come from the book. I found it on the internet. The circumference of life cannot be drawn rightly until the center is set.
Ooh, I like that.
I did too. I did too. What does that make you think? What does that trigger in your thoughts? You gotta
Grounding. It's you have to be. This has the core has to be strong, and if the core isn't strong, then any of this wind is going to blow you down.
Right.
But if the core is strong, you can handle whatever the wind is that comes around.
Excellent. I totally agree. So, we can be in an experience that is normally stressful or upsetting by moving our attention to center, to spirit, and from there, we can experience the same thing differently. You know, if there at the scene of an accident, they ask anybody who was nearby, what did you see? What did you see? What did you see?
It's all different.
It's all different.
Right.
It's all different. 'Cause
Same way siblings experience their life growing up with.
Yeah.
You
Like,
connect
did you
with
ever
your
hear the
brothers,
story of
sisters.
somebody tells the story, and
Right.
then they're supposed to do it all.
The telephone
Yeah.
tree,
Yeah.
yeah.
By the
Don't you
time-
remember how that when you were a
Yeah,
kid?
and by the
Yeah,
time you get
operator
to
was
the
so
end,
far.
it's
totally different. Totally different. But, and back to Carol's, have you ever talked to a sibling about something that you remember so clearly,
So different.
and their memory of the same incident
So different.
is so different.
Yeah.
I have to call my one daughter and say, when things happen like that, was she raised in the same household?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Are we all in the same place?
Yeah.
And
I
the
know.
parents see it differently too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Every person that's involved has a different perspective. And well, we'll get to that too. We'll talk about perspective more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this slide is very, very informative. I would, and this again is not from the book. This is something I found that supports this. Authentic being leads to conscious doing. So when we're our authentic self, who we are and what we do match. Have you ever met someone that what they say just doesn't jive?
I'm a Christian.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. I'm a Christian.
So, you got it, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes. But you know what, and you feel it.
They talk a good
You
game.
absolutely feel it. Or you might see it.
Yeah, like an aura around people, or
Mhm.
you get that feeling.
Yeah. I mean, when they say, oh, I love everyone, or, oh, I don't even see color, which is such BS. Just saying. It's if someone is true to themselves, you can feel that alignment. If someone is not true to themselves, you can also feel that misalignment.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the energy's different.
Yeah. What we do must be in alignment with who we truly are. If what we're doing is out of alignment, then it is conditioned doing rather than conscious doing. That does come from this book, and that is really, really important, even though I screwed up the slide, we've got to fix it. If what we're doing is out of alignment, then it's conditioned doing rather than conscious doing. Now, as children, we're not so much in control of ourselves, right? We're raised the way we're raised, in the house we're raised in, and we come into adulthood with that. We can't change that. We can't change our past. So what we're doing when we react in fearful ways, in ways that are harmful to other people, when we react in less than godly ways, if you will, that's a result of what has been conditioned as a human. When we look at what we're doing and we say, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to fight all the time. I don't want to run from every conflict I run into. I want to be stronger and more self-assured and more I want to be true to who I really am. When we start doing that, then we're moving from that conditioned reaction to a conscious response. And it's huge.
Yeah, sometimes in a work situation, you are asked to support something that you do not agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And volunteer too.
Yeah.
Situations.
Yeah. How do you handle that?
Well, it depends on the situation too. Sometimes it's minor,
Mm-hmm.
and you may be able to walk around it.
Okay.
But sometimes when it's major, it can mean your job.
I just
Right.
remember
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, there's actually a story in here about a woman who encountered that situation, and because she stood up for herself and for who she really is, she ended up losing her job. However,
Got a better one.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what we have, that's what I'm saying, is when we go into the situation, as challenging as it may be, we have to know that ultimately it is for our highest good and we're going to come out better for it.
We're like a divorce.
Yeah, there you
Yes,
go.
yeah.
Perfect example.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
Unfortunately, there's a few of us that have gone through that.
And there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Mhm.
Yes, and you can
Yes.
see that she has become the light once again.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you really
Yeah.
I have seen that too.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
Well, let's just
Oh, for sure.
acknowledge it and
Yeah.
tell her, yes, I
So-
see it.
So Linda B., can you read this for us, please?
When the poles of being and doing become imbalanced or out of integrity or conflicted, an interference pattern of energies arises and creates tension and stress in your life.
Okay. So when we're not behaving in a way that is in alignment with who we really are, what we're doing is setting up a dissonance, a shift in energy patterns that actually creates tension, creates stress, and then we got to deal with that. And I love this about regret. Regret is often a symptom of not being authentic in relation to a particular circumstance or a particular person. I mean, if you're looking back at something and say, oh no, I really wish I wouldn't have done that, then you're out of alignment with your own authenticity. Because you were doing something that wasn't, you did something that wasn't who you really are. It didn't come from love. It came from, and if it didn't come from love, where'd it come from?
fear.
You bet. And when we come from fear, we're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to keep ourselves safe. We're trying to make ourselves okay. Instead of knowing that we're always okay. Because authenticity is a fundamental component of that wholeness that we seek. And you notice that wholeness is at the center, at the eye of the storm. Authentic being and conscious doing. Authenticity is the litmus test of our own self-worth. When we truly value ourselves, we live integrity we live in integrity with our spiritual nature. As you can see, I finished this last night and did not edit. But that's the thing. The whole self-worth thing, people think, oh, I'm fine. I like myself. I'm good. And I would have been the first one to stand up here and say that a few years ago even. Because I thought, well, I've done a lot of work on that. And I had. But sometimes we find that hidden way down deep inside where we thought we had uncovered it all. We haven't.
We're gonna work on ourselves till the day we die.
That's true. So take our last breath.
Yeah.
And it'll be ever changing too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, always.
I mean, we compare ourselves to other people, and we find, and I don't know about you, but I'm coming up short a lot.
Yeah.
But why am I comparing? There's no need for me to do that. I am an individualized expression. I'm unique. Each of us are unique. We're not supposed to be like this one or that one.
My grandson told me that he was getting teased at school for being short,
Uh-huh.
you know, and I was like, well, your dad did too, because he was short and I'm short.
No, you're stuck with it.
Yeah, and I said, you know, the thing is you'll look young later on because your dad always looked young when he was short, you know. So,
Yeah.
but I know, I'm like, you know, people get teased for being tall, you
Yeah.
know. People get,
Yeah, that's
so,
what
you know,
happens.
kids got to deal with a lot of this stuff
They
too.
do.
Oh, yeah,
So
Where
they
do
definitely.
they
should
get
really
it
like
from?
learn some of this stuff.
Where do the kids get it from? They get it from their parents.
Right.
They're taught that. Because if your
Mhm.
kids aren't out there teasing people,
Right.
you know, I know because I taught my kids not to There'll be prejudice. I
Right.
don't care if you're gay. I don't care
Right.
if you're black. I don't care if you're pink, purple. And my kids are really good. Not that they're good at everything, but they're really good at
At
stuff
that.
like that. But I taught them that. But their father was just the opposite. He was prejudiced. He was
Right.
this. So you choose.
Right?
And the same in my family. My mother wasn't prejudiced. She had a lot of black people working for her. She loved them. They were hard workers. And the father I grew up with, he was just the opposite. He didn't like Jewish people. He didn't like black
Nicknames
people.
for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So I'm glad I went the other way. I'm more like my mother.
And that goes back to choice. We, as adults,
Yep.
make a choice.
Mhm.
Many people think that being, I love this. All right, Sharon, can you read that?
Many people think that being spiritual means being positive, but being spiritual means being conscious and aware. To become conscious is a much different thing than to become positive. To become conscious and aware, we must become authentic. Authenticity includes both positive and negative.
Right. We don't deny it. We don't deny any part of ourselves. What we resist persists. So if we try to deny it and cover up the fact that we're scared, then it's just gonna come back and bite us in the butt.
And you can never change. You can never change that way. I mean, in other words, if you're not introspective and figuring out what isn't working, it's going to go on and on and on because you don't even want to look at it and know it's there.
Right, right. If you can't look in the mirror and say, there's something about me that I need to change so that I can handle this situation, this person, this whatever it is, because it's not about changing them or changing the circumstances. It's about changing ourselves. So this part of the slide right here about authenticity is where our beliefs and values come together with our actions and behaviors. That's when we're being authentic.
And I think the thing too here is to understand from that point of being spiritual means being positive. All of us make choices based on the event that is occurring. And sometimes the choice that we make has hurt someone, or we've said the wrong thing, or we've acted out inappropriately. Now, we're still spiritual beings, but the fact remains that part of that is taking that authentic part and saying, Linda, I think I hurt your feelings when I said this, and I'm very sorry. Just that apology means that you're taking an action to be different, and I apologize. And you don't have to go into like big,
Right.
detail, like, because you were wearing purple that day and your hair was, whatever. It doesn't matter.
No.
The apology is what, please forgive me for being inappropriate or forgive. And then I think that generates that spirituality inside of you going, okay, I ain't gonna happen again. I'm gonna handle it differently
and
next time.
I think we can say, and I'm working on doing
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, that's
Sure, absolutely.
So that they know, I know I messed up, and I'm sorry, and I'm working on me.
Right.
It wasn't you, I'm working on me.
I love these. Oh.
Ah,
My
oh my
office
God.
last week.
Conflict is conflict because we don't know how to relate to a perceived threat in a way that makes us feel safe and okay. So when we don't know what to do, we just lash out.
Explode.
A lot of that comes from our kids too. When we're growing up, that some of us, that's the only protection we knew,
Yeah?
and
That's
nobody
very-
told us differently.
Right?
And
Sometimes you
even
have
from
to
our
do that.
not only brothers and sisters, but our parents maybe even. Like I'm lashing out here because I don't know how else to protect myself. And they would lash out to you, and then you'd be like, okay, that's what I have to do.
Right.
That's the way I have to
That's
react.
what we learn.
Right, that was
Practice
part of
what
that
we learn.
learning reaction.
Like, I went and took Dave down to the veterans for injection. Now, like I said, I'm in the middle of divorce too. But when I came out, when I got out of the car, there was nothing there, but when I got to the car, there was a bunch of like spit by the car. Like a bunch of spit. I had to like step over it.
Boy spit.
I'm like, who would have came by here and spit? We weren't even in there that long.
I wasn't even in there.
We were only in there about a half.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you know, you do have to watch out.
Oh, yeah. Okay, conflict does not come to us. It comes from us. Now, isn't that an interesting statement? Conflict arises from within as an effect of two competing intentions. A compelling desire to feel safe, okay, and valued, and the drive to fulfill our soul's purpose. Now, which one of those desires do you think is going to be more effective?
The second one. We can breathe, count to 10, whatever it takes.
Yeah. And we're going to talk more about this, about, what is here for me to learn? We need to ask, I think, Darrell, you said it, about asking ourselves questions. The more we ask ourselves questions, the more we learn. Resistance and defense are what appears to be an adversary is really just a mirror of our own resistance. And have you ever noticed, because I sure have, that there are certain things that seem to keep happening? It's like it's on repeat. I mean, not every day necessarily, but you think you've got something resolved, and then all of a sudden something very similar pops up again.
Because you haven't healed that.
Exactly. And so that mirror is being held up to us and saying, you thought you dealt with it. But there's still more for you. There's still more work for us to do. And that's what it's telling us. Our resistance and defensiveness arise out of those parts of ourselves that are not connected to our wholeness. Because that's what we're working on. We're working on becoming centered in the wholeness of who we truly are. And conflict can honestly lead to rebirth and transformation. And that's why I said this morning, the toughest times we go through are the times when we grow the most. It is only in the presence of challenging circumstances that we awaken to the possibilities of the moment. That is huge. Michelle, can you read that, please?
No, I can't. I can't really see what's on top. It's so light. I
Oh,
can't see what's
okay.
on
Yeah.
top.
If your soul is a force within you that seeks to push you towards the ever-increasing levels of spiritual growth and development, then your resistance to this pressure is what produces discomfort, stress, and ultimately the storm.
That's pretty powerful. If your soul is a force within you that seeks to push you toward ever-increasing levels of spiritual growth and development. So our soul is saying, is pushing us. Our soul is telling us that we want to grow closer to that one presence that lives in, through, and as us. And then if we resist what our soul is pushing us toward, then that's when we're going to encounter discomfort, stress, and ultimately the storm. So we can't, it's back to the what you resist persists. It's amazing how these tiny little phrases contain so much power. Outer resistance comes from either a physical limitation, an opposing opinion, or judgment. So outer resistance can also occur when you're in the middle of the traffic jam and you just I don't want to be here. Why is this happening? Why does this always happen to me? That's resistance. Or I had planned to go to the ball game. I was really looking forward to it, and instead of a beautiful sunny day, I get rained out. And I can't even go the next time they're going to have this game. What about blah, blah, blah? We're resisting what is. And when we resist what is, guess what? It's going to come back.
Mhm.
It's going to keep coming back until we figure out that that isn't working for us. Wishing things were different takes us out of the moment and gives power to the situation. And what our soul is moving us toward is living in the current moment so that we can take authentic action. You know, the whole Ram Dass be here now thing comes up again and again and again and again. Outer resistance is useful as feedback to the creative process. If someone finds fault with what we have said or done, we can take one of two tracks. We can correct this, like Michelle was saying, we can correct the situation, make amends, or we can stand by our actions and take personal responsibility. I'm sorry you were hurt, and I felt this way.
It wasn't my intent, or
Right.
It wasn't
right.
my intent, or sometimes you just have to say, I was hurt. And I responded that way because of my own hurt. Or we can become defensive, we can take offense, we can blame them and try to make them wrong. It was all your fault.
and not talk to him for a very long time.
We can do that too.
Whatever it is.
Outer resistance is about what we said or did, what there is about what we said or did, what the relationship or the other person needs, but it is never about us. That outer resistance that comes at us isn't about us, it is actually for us. Inner resistance is a defensive posture. And when we have inner resistance, we exhibit that reactive behavior, we exhibit prejudice, we justify our actions. I love this. I was raised by a celebrity, I don't know how to behave any differently. The president did
Oh
it.
my God.
I'm just following scripture. I love that one. Well, I did it because they tipped well. Oh. Walmart is an evil corporate behemoth that will never miss one Van Halen tape.
Oh, shoplifting excuse. Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
They still make
Or
tapes?
the therapist said it was biochemical.
There you go.
Oh, ooh.
I'm not. It's not me. Or we have the need to be right, and have you? I mean, I was married to Mr. I have to be right all the time, and it was just it's exhausting.
Right fighters.
Yeah. And I love when I heard it from Wayne Dyer. I think other people have said it. If you have the choice to be right or be kind,
Be kind and you're always right.
There you go. I like that one
I'm
there.
gonna write that down.
I never heard that before. I love that.
You don't want to be too
Yep.
kind too and take advantage.
I like that.
And of course, inner resistance triggers that fight or flight mechanism. Resistance comes from within. It separates us from our spiritual resources and intuition. Inner resistance confuses the line between us and our experience. So when we find ourselves resisting, we have forgotten who we truly are. We are not this experience or what's happening to us. We are that center. We are wholeness. We are choice. We always have a choice to go back to that center, ask for the guidance we need, and give ourselves a break. This was a kind of a cool story. It says, this is an ancient Chinese saying. It says, embrace tiger, return to mountain. And basically what that means is whatever challenge we're facing, just embrace it. Deal, you know, we have to say, okay, you know, we have a car that's only got 22,000 miles on it. It hasn't needed any work, and we hit a chuck hole.
Oh.
Not fun.
After hitting the chuck hole, as I'm driving down the road, it's going,
Oh, God, an alignment thing.
and I'm like, oh, it's just out of alignment, no big deal.
Wrong.
Broke something.
$500 later,
That's all.
well, it was only a new tire and an alignment on top of that. Because I didn't know this, but evidently tires have these steel bands in them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit a chuck hole just the right way, or the
It
wrong
bends
way,
it in.
it moves it. The guy said it was moved like 2 inches. And that makes it vibrate, and that puts the car out of alignment. So you don't just get an alignment and go back. You get a $250 tire and a $250 alignment. How fun! But you embrace, you know, and it's like my reaction would have been years ago to curse the pothole, to say they must be wrong, I you know, they're trying to cheat me or whatever. Instead, this time I was able to say, that sucks. And I am so grateful that we have enough money to pay the bill.
Right.
And that you weren't in an accident.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it could have been worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have severely damaged something more, and it could have cost 10 times more money. Could have ruined the car, I suppose. I mean, stuff happens. But we have to embrace what happens and then return to the mountain, return to center is basically what that's
I
saying.
have to tell a story
Oh,
that
good.
is beyond that. On one Sunday morning, quite a few years ago, my father was in the bedroom, ready to get dressed. My mother was, I think, in the dining room, and all of a sudden they heard this ungodly sound. A semi-truck with two trailers on behind, which they had tractors, was going down the highway and it was very foggy. Somehow lost control, went through the neighbors on the other side of the road, up and around, and brought that baby between 2 trees into my parents' house and knocked that farmhouse, off its foundation.
OMG.
Moved it like 45
Degrees.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
inches, off the foundation. They had to move out that day.
Wow.
The amazing thing, a couple of things, is that my brother had heard it, and my mother was moving towards it, and he pulled her back, so she wasn't right in the living room. My nephews were upstairs, were knocked off their beds. I mean, it was an unbelievable impact. They were right off their beds. My father, who was putting on his pants, he landed on the floor, and he would have been right in direct line of that semi coming in, but it was an older semi, and it had more of a snub nose, so it didn't go any further than the foundation. I mean, it was just an unbelievable.
And what are the odds?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just, we have pictures of it where it's still, within there, but they couldn't go back into the home
No,
because
dangerous.
it wasn't safe. I mean, the cracks in the ceiling and the walls and the foundation. And my brothers are out there. I had driven over a few hours later, and my brothers are out there, and this foundation along the basement area, they're putting in to just keep the animals out, because it was open in some areas there. And I'm like, be careful. Oh, this is really steady, typical my brother. He shut up, and it's moving back and forth the whole foundation. It's moving like, not just a little bit, but it's rocking back and forth. And we're like, whoa.
Wow.
It was just. Talk about needing to embrace the tiger and return to the mountain. It was tough because they had lived there for In 40 years
You know,
or
and where
more.
do you know, it's like, oh,
Where do you go?
talk about a disruption in
Yeah.
your life, my
Oh.
gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was just
And it's not like, it's not like one person or two people lived there.
Right.
There were,
2 families in there.
yeah, that's a lot. And they dealt with it, hopefully, the
Yeah.
best they could.
Yeah.
When we embrace resistance rather than push it away, we actually make that resistance our ally and advisor. And isn't that a different perspective? We'll be talking more about perspective. So we want to make friends with so this was chapter 4. I do encourage, if you've got the book, these Awerapy, let's see, this is page 78 and 79. Let me just, real quick. Oh, yeah, like you really need to do this. Think of a relationship that failed. Consider how not being authentic, real, or honest contributed to its demise. What underlying beliefs do you have about yourself that support the patterns of your life? I mean, that's the kind of stuff, when we start really thinking about it, we're gonna, we're probably
And
gonna,
like to give yourself some time to just like sit still, not with TV on, not with anything, and really think about that.
Mhm. And it doesn't, and it might be something you might write I would highly recommend you get a notebook, or if you have a journal, it can just be part of one of your journal entries. Because these are things that, like somebody said, I don't know if it was Michelle or who it was, things change. My credo is it's not set in stone. It will probably change over time as I change. But this is a journey. Life is a journey. So chapter 5, we're going to talk about the 4 winds of conflict. And those 4 winds are separation, misperception, competition, and defensiveness. Separation says, we are born into a world system that is unable to mirror our innate worth to a degree which would allow us to emerge into adulthood with our sense of wholeness intact. Nobody, probably no one, I don't care if you came from a rich family, a poor family, a mom and dad family, a dad and dad family, a mom and mom, a no dad or no mom, it doesn't matter. It's not the family, it's the system that we were born into. There's no way that we make it into adulthood with our sense of wholeness intact. It's up to us as adults to work on that, to make ourselves whole. With no way of understanding or explaining the painful moments of our lives, we blamed ourselves for the neglect or the abuse we may have experienced. And that's how our self-worth gets damaged. That's how we forget who we truly are. We were children. There was no way for us to understand why the things that happened. So we blamed ourselves. Well, if I would have been smarter, if I would have been prettier, if I would have done this, if I would have been more athletic. I mean, we just blame ourselves. Because mommy and daddy are up there on a pedestal and they can do no wrong. So it couldn't have been them, so it must have been me. Carol?
And that's why my daughter was 6 when I got divorced from her daddy, and I made sure, I told her many, many times, we both love you. You did not cause this, because she was at age of, she was close, she could understand that, because children naturally, because they're supposed to be self-centered, they think it was their fault, that they did something right. So you have to just constantly, Rainbows for All God's Children, that's a support group for kids going through divorce, okay? So she was in that, she was in one-on-one therapy with a wonderful therapist, play therapist, where she buried stuff, and it was really cool. I mean, and I couldn't even know what went on. It was so amazing.
That's good.
It was great, confidentiality. But all I'm saying is, because otherwise that happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they figured they did something.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of parents that can't afford the therapy and all of those things. That
Well,
you were-
Rainbows was free because that was a support group. But yeah.
And some people didn't. I never.
They don't
heard
know
of it.
that,
I didn't.
yeah.
Didn't know there was such a thing. And I wish I had.
Or no, because I taught and had it really tons of, thank God, and tons of classes because I taught little ones. They told us there, you know what I mean, that this can happen, that children feel responsible, and that was way before
Right.
I was divorcing, but yeah, thank God.
Children and adults, especially as a nurse and seeing a parent dying, the child might think that it was their fault, or even adults, well, I wanted them to hurry home and they did, and they,
Oh God, that whole,
right?
yeah, yeah.
they're just, again,
Caused it.
blaming themselves for a death, which that's hard to live with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But these are the things that we do to ourselves.
Blaming yourself for
And so
staying.
to manage this imperfect world, we learned how to separate ourselves from our experiences and from our own inner divinity. Because in our sense of separation, we're driven to avoid what threatens us and makes us feel unsafe. And we try to do this
Oh my God.
by controlling others, needing to be right, or just plain old trying to avoid conflict. My go-to was the avoidance, because I figured out, it didn't take me long to figure out I wasn't controlling anybody else, because they weren't listening to me. And even though maybe I felt the need to be right, that wasn't working for me. So the only thing that I learned that worked for me was just to avoid it. Because if I just let them be right, it's okay. That's what you want, that's what we'll do. It's all good. Because it was easier for me. Because it made me feel safer to do that.
I think, it's kind of interesting, because I don't see conflict totally as a bad thing.
It's not.
And I think it's important to understand that you pick your battles. You may not, win the battle, but you really want to win the war, So it's okay to compromise and say, okay, we're doing it this way this time. Next time, no, or whatever that
Even
may
with
be,
your own
we're gonna
children,
discuss it a little different,
Even with your own children, you have to do that.
Oh my God.
Like,
Ain't that the truth?
my granddaughter, she likes to buy little baby diapers for her baby dolls. But she acted so bad at the store that we walked out of the store. And I said, sorry, you acted that bad, you aren't getting anything. And we were walking right out the store.
Right.
Good for you, right?
Setting boundaries.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong with
So
it.
sometimes, like you said, picking your battles.
Right,
like,
you gotta pick,
and
I'd
some
rather
things
win the
you might
war
let
than
it
win the battle.
slide, but some things you're like,
Right. And as long as it doesn't compromise my authentic self. If the conflict has to do with, we're gonna go and rob that store,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I ain't going to rob no store. You know what I'm saying? That would be an avoidance I would have. You go,
Right.
call me later, call me from police officer.
But they might,
Yeah. Call me from
they might
jail.
say, hey, they pulled a gun on you and say, oh, you're going in with me.
Well,
Then what
that's
do
a
you do?
different situation. You don't have much of a choice
Right.
Yeah.
in that regard. But, if the conflict is not meant to hurt anyone, and you need to stand for your authenticity, you decide, how much is this gonna really affect me? They wanna do this instead of doing that, then, because people fight over everything. Everything.
Yeah.
You're wearing black, well, I wanted you to wear blue. Okay, well, I wanna wear black, but I wanted you look better, and, that kind of thing. Could be as simple as that.
I'm wearing black. You
Right.
can't wear black.
My choice, I'm wearing it, and I'm not conflicting with you, I'm just going to wear it, thank you very much. And it could be that simple, or it could be something like that, I'm not doing that thing with you because it definitely is against my authenticity of who I am as a person. No, I'm not gonna poke somebody's tire with a knife. You know what I'm saying?
I
That's,
hate those songs.
I almost
You know.
wanted to do that.
no,
I'm not
some
saying
voice
that,
to it, like,
that
you
the
know.
desire might not.
I know.
Maybe
I don't
it
want to
sounds
hit that old
better
lady
song.
across the street because
What
I
song
am
is
that
that?
old lady.
Or like saying,
That
you
song
know, I
about-
always thought when I get older I might bite people.
There you go. Never
As
wear
long as
these-
I have my teeth.
That's right. That's right. As long as I
Wait a
have
minute,
my
put my teeth in first, right?
But I guess the thing is, avoiding conflict is not, in my opinion, not a bad thing. I think you have to pick your druthers.
Right,
You
right.
have to pick your druthers.
Right, I agree. So, when we can truly see that these ways of managing life only reinforce our sense of separation, and when we can also see how in our separation, we create conflict, we will begin to move toward wholeness. And that's what this is all about, just we're moving, we're changing. Misperception, our capacity of this whole section on misperception I found very interesting. Our capacity to accurately read a situation is influenced by how we see things, how we hear what's being said, and I think almost most importantly, how we feel about ourselves. Anger, fear, defensiveness, and other emotional states also contribute to how we perceive a situation. But you know, it's like we were talking about earlier. You could put 6 people in the same situation, or 2 or 3 or 4 or half a dozen siblings, and they all see it differently. Their recollection is different.
The same
Because-
situation, right?
Because they all saw, even though they saw the same thing you saw, they didn't perceive it the same way. They didn't hear what was being said in the same way. Why did they not hear what was being said in the same way? Because how they felt about themselves
It's filtered.
was not the same as how you felt about yourself.
But
I
they
mean-
might not have been there either, because there's a situation when I was a kid, my sisters weren't there. I was there in the situation with my parents. So, oh, really? That happened? But, you know, they weren't there, so how can they?
Right. And so, you know, we can be angry, we can be fearful, we can be defensive, and that affects what we see. When we're afraid, I mean, we can paint a person into something that they totally are not. If we feel unsafe, it's time to investigate where that unsafe feeling comes from. And the feeling arises from what we know, what we believe, or what we imagine about the situation. We read all kinds of things into what other people are doing. Oh, she did that because she doesn't really like me. She did that because she wants my job. She did that because whatever. And we make up stuff.
Well, it's like this story in the first half about the pastor that thought he was going to
Oh, yeah.
lose his job.
Yeah,
And here what happened is totally different.
I know. But we do. We just make stuff up. When individuals or communities use conflict as an opportunity to challenge their own way of seeing things, they awaken to new aspects of themselves. So this is what we as a community and as individuals want to do. We want to see these conflicts, see these things that we said, oh, why is this happening? It's happening because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to grow as a community, to grow as individuals. And when we see it that way, that's what we'll get. Because misperception feeds conflict, and understanding this is vital in working in adversarial relationships. Are we ever going to stop having adversarial relationships in our life? No, we're not. So the best thing we can do is do what we're doing right now. Learn how to deal better with it. And competition. we all have different needs, goals, and values. And when what we want or value gets in the way of what someone else needs, wants, or values, guess what happens? There's going to be conflict, competition. The danger of competition in a relationship is when the result of competition, I don't care if it's a race or a golf tournament, there's a winner and there's a loser. The loser feels diminished, angry, or resentful, but the winner also loses because the winner's reward is a feeling of their feelings of inferiority are reinforced, and maybe their need to be right is a way that they mask or protect their own sense of insecurity or inadequacy. So they, it's like we're not even looking for win-win situations. We're looking for situations where there is no competition. We're looking to say, it's okay. If we have to compete to get what we need, we do so at the expense of our own sense of wholeness and worth. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever been in a relationship where you felt like you had to compete, it's an ugly thing, and it ain't fun. And when we're defensive, that it means that we automatically feel that we're in the presence of an adversary. If I'm feeling defensive, then I'm feeling that I'm being threatened. My well-being is being threatened, and that's why I'm feeling defensive. And of course, defensiveness is back to that. It's linked to the fight or flight response, and it's evidence of our sense of separation from our wholeness. And when our defenses are activated, we don't draw together. We distance ourselves from one another.
That's happened a lot with people, I think, over
Oh my gosh.
politics and different stuff.
Absolutely. It absolutely has. I hate to, it's like our nation, I'm not a young person, but I don't remember ever seeing our nation as divided as it is today.
Well, and then not only that, but like compare, the kids today, they don't even go outside. And if they do, they've got to be driven to everything, like when we were kids, we were outside all the time.
Get on your bike and now if you
Yeah.
want.
Jump around, try to climb the tree.
Right.
Yeah.
And now the kids
Yeah.
want to be like this.
Lemonade,
Or,
candy little stores on the block.
I know it's a changing situation.
Several years ago, though, when my grandkids were still young enough that I drove them places, I remember driving them places, and the car's absolutely silent. And there's 3-4 kids in the car, and they're all, and they not talking to. It used to be like when I picked up my kids from school, it was like you couldn't shut them
The
up.
radio station, the station will be on, everything.
Yeah.
Now everybody, like my kids be on their phone, I get so mad because I be like, do y'all know how to conversate with me?
Yeah.
Like everybody be on their phone, I'm like, I'm just picking you up. I'm driving like 10 miles, you looking on your phone for like 30 minutes and then say nothing to me. That like really drives
I
me
know.
nuts.
I know.
And a phone basket, when you get in.
That's a great idea. I have a lot of teacher friends who said before they started the phone, they made cubicles. When you check in, you put your phone in that cube and you don't take it out till you leave. And at my house, I always say to my grandkids, you're at my house, put the phone down. You're here to visit with me. You
Right.
can't visit with me on your phone. We'll
Right.
play cards, we'll sing, we'll do that.
Right.
Even in the car, like in that situation, I would have turned up the volume and I would have said, put your phones down, we're gonna sing now.
Yeah.
And they'd be going like, oh, Bocce,
You
come on.
just don't know
But
what's going on in their minds,
right.
you know?
Talk to me,
Right.
Because you're gonna miss out.
Yeah, you're gonna miss out. You're missing out on what the other person's experiences are. You know, so you can't even, that's a connection. That's how you connect to your kids, you know. I remember when you had that problem in
And
math.
you know, like
they're
my-
not telling you they got
My
the math problem.
son,
Where's
you
the
know,
problem?
watches a wrestling match together, you know, on the phone together with his son. You know, so it's like they're still doing it
Right.
together and talking about it or something.
Right.
You know.
I'm surprised more of them don't get hit by cars because you see them walking
Oh
down
my
the
God,
sidewalk,
that's the truth.
you know, with their heads down in their phone.
Or trains.
I was watching some, I have no idea
I've
what
seen them.
show
They
it was.
actually, one lady fell in a pond in the mall. And she was walking with her phone.
Oh, that's
She
funny,
saw
but
it.
not
She
funny.
walked right into one of
Oh
those
my
ponds.
God.
And she got out. She was all soft and wet.
I was watching some spoof show. I don't know what. I don't have any idea what show it was. But there's this guy, and he's on a bicycle, and on the bicycle he has the horn that you normally see in a semi.
Oh my God.
And so he sees people walking across the crosswalk and in an
There's an air horn.
intersection.
Oh my God.
And they're looking on their phones, and so he turns the corner on his bicycle and hits that horn, and these people are like, and it was really interesting. Some of them were, cool about it. Some of them, not so much. I mean, it's like they just were very, very annoying. Who do you think you are? What makes you think you can?
He's gonna get shot in the wrong areas.
Yeah.
My husband used to look while he was driving on Facebook. I would say, "Get off of there! You're going to kill us."
Yeah, or somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. A kid walked into the side of my neighbor's car. We were standing at a light,
Oh,
and the light changed, so it was okay for us to go. And walked right into the side of the car. My poor neighbor had a heart attack.
well, sure.
She thought she hit him. But I was sitting right there, and I saw him. He walked into us. We didn't hit him. And I felt sorry for the kid because he was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because we had asked him, well, because he fell down. And we asked, can we take you someplace? He said, no, we're okay. But a couple people in the cars behind us, they did the same thing. They asked him, can we take you someplace?
Right.
But he continued to just walk down the street. He was so embarrassed.
Mm-hmm. Defensiveness can only be shunted at its root, and its root is resistance. Again, we've been through this. It's good. So that was chapter 5, the 4 winds of conflict. Now we're going to talk about solutions. Those were all the problems that we encountered. Now we're talking about solutions. And the first one is communion, which is the first attribute of wholeness. And when I saw the title of this chapter, I thought, what? What do they mean by that? And the definition of communion is the sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings, especially when the exchange is on a mental or spiritual level.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I thought it was important to really define what communion is, because when I think of communion, I think of walking up to the front of the Catholic Church and
church or
putting
Lutheran
the
church.
putting the wafer and sipping the wine and blah blah blah. I mean but that's not the kind of communion we're talking about. There's only one true relationship, and that's our relationship with the one presence and power. If you want to call it God, fine. If you want to call it presence and power or Allah or Buddha, or I don't care what you call it. But that's the true relationship, is that ourselves with our own wholeness. And relationship is the arena in which we experience our wholeness and worth. And I might add, or lack thereof. So it's these relationships are it. I mean, if you I think it's a lot easier to be spiritual if you live alone in the middle of the woods. But if you ain't going to do that, which I have no interest in doing that, then we're going to deal with relationships. And in order to experience our own wholeness and worth, we have to know how to be in a relationship and make it work. And conflict is a symptom of miscommunion. Not miscommunication, but miscommunion. And this occurs when there are breakdowns or missing pieces in our intention to connect, commune, or co-create. So when their pieces are missing, we make up for it. Judgment is about judgment isn't about who's being judged, it's about the person doing the judging. And it's about what's missing for the other person, what they need or the relationship needs. And Mr. Simmons tells a story about he was out of town and he comes back into town and his wife, who had missed him because he was gone, said, "Why is it you never take me out to dinner anymore?" But instead of hearing what she was really saying was that I missed you, what he did instead was say, "Well, I mean, look at here. I took you out to dinner to this place, we went to such and such, and on this date I took you to this place and we did such and such, and on this date," and guess how well that helped? It didn't. It's not about it's what they need or what the relationship needs, or it's about what they heard you say or didn't that caused some sense of concern. Judgments are for you. This was really hard for me. It's important for us to have the information because it helps fill in the gaps, repair the breakdowns, discover the missing communication, the missing pieces, and create communications. So, they're for us. They're that mirror that is held up to us. Our reaction is about us. And it's about our need to feel safe and okay, our need to be right, or it's about some unresolved issue of our past that's been triggered. And I would say 1 and 3 are the 2 biggies in my book. But when we react, what do we need to do? We need to take ownership. Just like Michelle said, if I've done something to hurt your feelings, I really apologize. Not if. I think I may have done something. I think I did something. I mean, it's like you almost have to rehearse it, I think, for me. Because I'm not that good at it.
Right.
I almost have to decide what I'm going to say and practice saying it so I don't say it the wrong way so that my apology can then be taken wrong. Because I really want to repair that problem or bridge that gap.
So you don't need to practice it, you just turn it over to the Holy Spirit, ask the Holy Spirit to give you the words to speak.
Well, sometimes Holy Spirit says practice.
Which makes perfect.
So we need to move to our center by focusing on what the relationship needs to create communion, and we need to learn to value judgment and criticism as opportunities to live from our wholeness and worth. And like I said, for me, this is one that I still struggle with today. I don't deal with feeling judged or criticized well at all. I'm working on it, getting better. Living from wholeness means we are connected to life, we are being responsive and engaged, we are embracing the moment or situation as if life depended on it, because it does. We are knowing our presence really matters and knowing we are the connecting link between divine presence and the situation or person we are with. I think that is probably the most important of all these. We are that sense of connection, that oneness, that knowing that there is only one presence and power, not just in me, but in each one of us. So even that person that just knows how to push our buttons is a unique expression of that one power and presence. and the buttons, the button pusher and the button pushee are in a symbiotic relationship that is really meant for the good of both of them. And it's just for me, the persons whose buttons are being pushed, to realize that, and to realize that, okay, I need to ask, what is here for me to learn? Because I ain't doing so good. When you find God in yourself, your relationship, or the situation, you experience true abundance. All is well. All things are working together for your highest good. So we have to look for the good. I mean, in some of the things that I've read over the years, God is just another name for good. You can just put another O in there. Because that is all there is from that presence and power, is goodness. Good. And that is chapter 6. Oh my gosh, we're doing really good. What time is it? Well, not too bad. Because we've only got one more chapter to go. The little prince said this: "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly what is essentially invisible to the eye." And this second attribute of wholeness that we're going to talk about today is principle. And the chapter title is See It Right, Not Make It Right. And in this context, the way Gary Simmons, the author, talks about it, principle is another word for God or divine presence. And it's another way of describing the nature of the universe, its order and intelligence. And that principle with a capital P, principle or God or that wholeness, that presence and power, is the eye in any storm, but in the storm of misperception. When we see something and we don't see it rightly, then we are disconnected from our God self. Principle addresses misperception. Truth principles help us to focus on the ever-present, unchanging order which manifests itself as the divine plan for good. So these are laws of the universe. Unity principles aren't just unity principles. Unity has just adopted some universal principles and put them into a format so that we can have something a little more tangible that we can learn and use on a daily basis. It's about becoming aware. As our awareness increases, then we increase our closeness to our wholeness. And there are two categories of truth principles. There are faith-based truth principles and love-based truth principles. And faith-based truth principles organize our attention and awareness on the divine presence in every situation. Love-based truth principles organize our attention and awareness on our oneness with the divine presence and with all of life. And these truth principles don't change over time. They're the same. It doesn't matter what culture you're in, what place you live in. They remain true for the entire human race, even as knowledge grows or ebbs. They're unchanging. Misperception occurs when seeing is believing, which results in judgment, or believing is seeing, which can result in blind faith. All human perception is incomplete, and therefore it is misperception the moment we say, this is it, that's the way it is, that's the truth. When we look at something and we declare, that's it, I mean, as much as unity truth principles are truth principles, but when we start insisting that if you don't live by these principles that I teach, then you are wrong and you are bad, or you are, there's something wrong with you if you don't believe how I believe. That's not what this is about. This is about finding what works for us, sharing it with other people, and allowing them to do with it what they will. It is not for us to judge. It is not for us to try to change someone else. It is for us to become closer to who we really are. In any given situation, there are many possibilities and innumerable paths. I like this, I don't know how well you can see this, but our perception, what we see, or what we think we see, is colored by our self-concept, by our values, by our experiences, beliefs, notions, our culture. I mean, all of those things, and that's why 2, 3, 5, 10 people in the same situation will see it differently. Our perception is incomplete, mediated by our need to feel safe and okay. And so what we do is we use principle, we use divinity, we use that power and presence to compensate for our own misperception. Faith is the avenue of awareness that sees divine presence in every situation, and love is the avenue of our awareness that sees our oneness with divine presence and our connection to all of life. And it is gaps in our awareness of our that own divine presence and our oneness with others that support our fear and distrust. So what we want to do is work on closing that gap. That's what we do when we work on ourselves. We close that gap between ourselves and our true self. We must be seeing rightly before we can even try to make it right. And how do we see rightly? Through principle. It's the basis of seeing life as it really is, the way divinity sees it. God is principle, the high watch, the viewpoint of omniscience. And principle is the way of order in the universe. It is the foundation of authentic action. And authentic action is doing the right thing. You know, Marianne, I think you're the one that said, when we ask, we are answered. So when we're in a situation and we don't know what to do, what's our best course of action?
Ask the Holy Spirit
Yes.
for guidance or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You'll get the answer if you're listening.
One
I've been hit in the head a few times.
one of my classmates, her designate, she doesn't use the terminology God. Hers is, and everybody's got their own, but I love hers. Hers is the big HS, as in Holy Spirit. So she calls on the big HS, which I got a big kick out of. Freeing ourselves from defensiveness. Darrell, can you read that, or is
I can read
it
it.
hard?
When faced with a situation that brings us to the edge of our resourcefulness, ask, what inner resource or quality do I need to help me manage this with confidence instead of insecurity, with ease instead of disease?
Yeah. So that we go back to what Marianne said. We need to ask. Ask for the guidance, ask for the support, ask for whatever it is, because we may not even know what we need. I do know that there is a presence and power that knows exactly what I need. And when we ask and you will receive.
Well, listen.
Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. And another thing that I've done instead of, isn't that awful, isn't that interesting? Becoming interested in discovering what inner resource or quality do I need to manage this situation without making it wrong or trying to make it go away. And where do we find those answers? We look inside and discover that we're missing, what's missing is our connection with our own sense of self-worth. And I have seen this in myself on too many occasions. And I thought I thought I had this all cleared up, folks. And it keeps coming back. Because, you know, it's gotten better, I've gotten better, but I haven't arrived. I probably never will.
You will, when you're on the other side.
On the other side.
What do
Sorry
you
you have
mean
to
by
wait.
arrive?
I've not reached
We all have to
perfection.
wait.
Your
I-
full self.
I've not reached the point where I can go into any circumstance and know without a doubt that I can handle it and I can be cool, calm, and collected. I'm not there yet. And I don't know when, as long as I'm in this human form, when or if I will ever get there. But I'm moving in that direction. And that's what we're doing. According to your faith, it is done unto you. That's a Bible quotation, and I forget the verse. How we see things, what we make our experiences mean, and what we do because of what we have made our experiences mean are powerful forces in our life. And we must bring our perceptions into the light of principle. So when we take what we see and ask for guidance, that helps us to interpret challenging situations from an awareness of truth with a capital T. Pardon me. And that is the end.
Oh.
Yay!
I just get up right in the perfect
Yes, you
time.
did. So, again, if you get a chance, or when you get a chance, go through those awarepi at the end of each chapter. They're really, really self-enlightening. So, if you get a chance or want to delve more into this, that's what I would recommend. So we're going to close with a prayer. So just take a moment and breathe and relax. And we'd like to say thank you. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Thank you for being here and being with us this day in this session of the eye of the storm, of realizing that no matter the storm, no matter the severity, no matter what we're going through, we can go through it because we are the presence and power of that one divinity that lives in, through, and as us, and lives through and as each and every person. We know that that presence and power is available to us anytime, just for the asking, all the time. So we just learn to ask more frequently. And we are so grateful for this knowing, so grateful for this coming together, so grateful for every person that was here today and contributed their time, talent, and treasure to making us all better people. Amen.